Hi everyone, my name is Emily Behm and I'm currently a graduate student in the school counseling K through 12 program here at CalU. And I also am a fall 2019 graduate of the early childhood education pre-K through 4 undergraduate program here at CalU. So the research that I did was actually for my cross-cultural counseling class, and I wanted to be able to present that to all of you because I think it is such an important and vital issue that we as a society and a country need to be exploring. The topic that I'll be speaking with you today is about the disproportionality of students who are minorities in special education in urban settings. So not only am I going to be presenting some statistics that I found to you, but I'm also going to be discussing what disproportionality is and what that looks like and how that impacts our society. I'm also going to be talking about some proposed ideas that I have after doing the research and my reactions to this research as well. So before we can really dive into the statistics, we need to develop a base as to what disproportionality is. So it's actually the overrepresentation of minority students identify with a learning disability or other type of disability under IDEA, which is also known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So sometimes disproportionality and overrepresentation can be used somewhat interchangeably. And in layman's terms, what this means is there's that overrepresentation of minority students that are identified with some sort of disability in the school system as opposed to non-minority students. And there are different factors that can cause overrepresentation that has been shown in research, such as test bias, which could mean maybe someone that's administering a test has a bias towards someone that's a minority and scores differently. Poverty is definitely a factor that can affect this because research can show that maybe some minorities are in poverty in the area and that this is going to impact the way they perform in school. Poor general education instruction is also a factor that can cause this, and insufficient professional development for working with diverse students, which is one that I really was interested to read more about. Because if we don't give the proper professional development and training for employees that are working with these students, then they may misplace these students or overrepresent them in special education like we're seeing. So I'll get a little more into that later. But I wanted to be able to lay out not only a definition for disproportionality, but also what factors can cause this in special education. So now that we have more of a basis as to what this is, let's talk about how this affects students. And not only am I going to talk about how this affects students, but it's also a ripple effect that affects our society. So, according to the research that I did, disproportionality can cause an array of things. This can prevent students, number one, from reaching their potential. And when this happens, it causes a ripple effect because if a student does not reach their full potential, this can serve as a barrier to them throughout their life as they're seeking post-secondary education potentially, or going into the workforce, or being a productive member of society. If students are not reaching their full potential because of the fact that they have been misplaced into the wrong setting, then this is going to cause them to struggle in many areas in their life, which also affects us because they as a citizen may not be reaching their potential because of what they endured in school. This also stokes negative stereotypes regarding minorities. And in this day and age, a lot more conversations are happening about stereotypes and microaggressions and racism and all sorts of discriminatory practices and how we can work together as a society to not have this happen. And unfortunately, disproportionality just fuels the fire for more negative stereotypes towards minorities when they already have so much on their shoulders in terms of different microaggressions or stereotypes they may have against them just because of who they are and where they're from. So this just stokes that even further and causes even more problems in that aspect. Another cause that can happen is that this lowers expectations for teachers, parents, and students, which actually contributes to my first point of how this prevents students from reaching their potential. So if teachers, parents, other students, the community have lower expectations for this student, then they're still not going to reach their potential because they may not be appropriately challenged or given the accommodations they need to succeed. So again, it just contributes to that ripple effect we talked about earlier. This also can result in racial profiling, which again relates to negative stereotypes, which can ultimately cause a disadvantage for minorities throughout the year and throughout their life. So these experiences stick with them and can, again, serve as those barriers that we are hoping not to have so that they can have a prosperous life and contribute to society and reach their potential. But this racial profiling, once again, that they may already be facing, but now are facing from an additional factor, can really cause a disadvantage in personal life, social, emotional aspects, academics, anything like that. This can just really cause a disadvantage for these students. And finally, the last point I found in my research with this topic about how this affects students is that this actually prevents schools from adjusting their curriculum and teaching strategies to meet the instructional needs of diverse students. So, in layman's terms, what that really means is the needs of these diverse students are not being met because this is preventing schools from appropriately adjusting their teaching strategies and their curriculum to meet the needs of these students. And a lot of times, the goals of schools and of teachers is to meet each student's needs, whatever they may be. And this type of disproportionality will prevent that from happening, which again leads back to point number one, preventing students from reaching their potential, which causes the ripple effect later on in their lives and follows them. So, I was absolutely shocked to see these statistics. I had a very difficult time finding any national statistics, which I'll be talking about here in a moment. But just looking at these statistics from California public schools absolutely blew me away. As you can see, the green bar represents Caucasian students, and the red and blue bars represent Hispanic and African American students. And I was absolutely floored to see in just one set of public schools back in 2013, not even knowing what it's like now in 2021, the disproportionality for intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbances, and specific learning disabilities absolutely blew past those of non-minority students by double, triple, quadruple. I mean, I was completely floored and also sickened to see this. And what sickened me even more is that I couldn't find more accurate and more, not maybe more accurate, but more recent data. And just to see one public school setting in one state with this problem makes me wonder how huge the problem is on a state level and let alone the national level, which I'm going to be getting to here in a moment. So these are the statistics I was able to find, and again, I was completely shocked, and there is a clear disproportionality in special education amongst minorities. So I was able to come up with some critiques and analyses of this issue after reflecting on my research. Point number one is that I truly feel we need to conduct more research, not only at the local level, which is important, but then compile that into state data and then national data and start to make comparisons between years, between schools, between demographics, all of those things, and critically analyze that data so we can truly get to the root of the problem and then come forth with solutions to start to decrease this disproportionality and even things out more and get these students what they truly need. I also feel that more focus needs to be put on resources that are going to stop disproportionality. So we need to find this balance between collecting the data and getting the true facts, and also getting the resources that are going to help solve this issue because it is a major issue we cannot ignore as a country, as a society, so that way these students can reach their full potential. Some of the ideas that I came up with for resources to help stop disproportionality, first and foremost, is our funding for not only employee training, but also assessment ideas that are going to be appropriate for these students. So, not only access to assessments, but appropriate implementation of them, accommodations for these students, and other educational resources that will benefit them. So the more funding we put into this, the more we're going to get out of it as a society because students will reach their potential. And the next thing you know, they're furthering their training or education post-secondary. They're being productive members of society. They're being important employees in various settings. It is beneficial to us to invest in our children because they are our future. And if we let our future slip in the cracks and not reach their full potential, then not only is that not going to benefit them, which is absolutely heartbreaking, it's also not going to benefit our society. So I truly feel that this is, again, a ripple effect that we need to get to the root to and address immediately. I also feel that appropriate extensive training for all stakeholders needs to be done. So not just the teachers that work directly with these students, but the school as a whole and any other stakeholders in the community that can help these students. So that way this issue does not continue to grow. Rather, it would decrease in this setting. We also need to raise awareness and focus on the issue, especially gathering statistics to back up our claims with factual evidence and data so that we can truly move in the direction that the data is taking us. And finally, we need appropriate awareness at the student level. So that way, profiling and stereotypes don't continue to be stoked, and that students can have a more enjoyable and safe experience at school. So, to reflect on my findings, I'm studying to be a counselor, and I truly believe that we as counselors must be aware of this issue, especially school counselors that are working directly with these students. And we can help to bridge the gap by educating ourselves more on these issues and advocating for change. And this goes for everyone, not just counselors. We have to continue to ask questions. The children are our future, and this problem is not just a school problem, it is all of our problem that we need to solve. Because if these students are not reaching their full potential, it is going to be a detriment not only to them but also our society. And we as adults owe it to these children whose control this is out of to help to end the disproportionality of minority students in special education. I am definitely someone who is a social justice advocate. And when I see something that is not right, I speak up so that I might help somebody. And I truly believe that I, as a current educator, a future counselor, a current graduate student, and someone who's always a reflective practitioner and individual, I feel that I really needed to speak up about this issue because it truly is just part of this big picture of trying to help our children, help our minorities, and take steps towards unity and towards equity and justice. With that being said, I will continue to advocate for change, and this research was just part of my journey to learn more, to educate myself, and to continue to thrive on that passion for helping others and making a change, no matter how big or small. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.